Hello Internet, and today's video is going to be a Top 5 Wednesday. This is a Goodreads group run by Samuel at Thoughts on Tomes. Both links are down below for your perusal. So today's topic is mashups. So you know how on the back of books in the blurbs they'll oftentimes say, this is a mix of Harry Potter and Game of Thrones, this is a mix of Percy Jackson and something else. Those sort of things. If you like Hunger Games, you'd like this. Like that sort of nonsense. So the concept here is to take something that you like, a book that you like, and mash it with something else. So for me, I am taking a book that I enjoyed and I want to mash it with a specific concept that I would like to see together in some sort of book or entertainment or TV show. I really don't care what form of media this comes in. I just want it to be a thing. You'll understand what I'm going for in a second. So for the very first mashup, I'm going to go with The Innocent Mage by Karen Miller. This is a high fantasy about two guys and there's a prophecy and like they're two really good friends and one is supposed to be this awesome mage except he's not. Like his people don't traditionally have magic, and one is like this prince and he's supposed to have magic but he doesn't, and they just have this really awesome friendship. And I did no justice to describing this book. The point is, I want this concept here of like two dudes like having this prophecy and stuff, but I want them to be gay. Like that's all I want. I just want queerness thrown into this epic high fantasy. And I want it to be an epic high fantasy, as complex, as like intriguing, as well thought out, as like well slow burn as this was, but I actually want the people to get together, because you can't tell me that if it was a man and a woman, like say if it was a prince and like some girl who became his assistant for some other reason, there wouldn't be a romance. There will most definitely be a romance if like they were thinking, oh, two opposite genders, right? Most traditionally you would think, oh yeah, there would be a romance. So I want that, but I want it to be gay. Like that's all I want. I want this book to be gayer. Yeah. That's basically it. For mashup number 2, I'm going to go with Randoms by David Liss. So this is sort of a middle grade YA book, and the main character is a sci-fi geek who ends up going off planet when he discovers that there is a federation of other aliens and they want to potentially have Earth join in, but they have to have a bunch of students go, 4 students from each planet that's potentially going to join the federation. They have to take a lot of tests and prove that their planet is worth joining this federation. Now, this really relies on this main kid being a huge sci-fi geek, a gigantic sci-fi geek. Like he's watched every little thing that has to do with science fiction and fantasy, whether it goes from reading to watching, and by using that sci-fi geek knowledge, he can make informed decisions when he is thrusted into a world where all of that sci-fi stuff is reality. So I want something like that, a concept of a very nerdy person who has a lot of information that traditionally in like contemporary society wouldn't be useful, but it'd be useful in the case of their adventure. Like his sci-fi knowledge really helps him in the case of the adventure that he's having and what he's trying to figure out. So I want that same thing, but I want it like in supernatural fantasy sort of stuff. So I just want some kid who's like done tons of research previously about werewolves, vampires, wendigos. I want them to like know every little different mythology, every little different creature that exists, unicorns, the different types of mythology. I want them to be like that, have that sort of obsession with something that has to do with like supernatural fantasy stuff, and then they be thrown into like say an urban fantasy setting. So it's just like this kid and they're super obsessed with this, and then all of a sudden it's like an urban fantasy and they find out unicorns, vampires, and werewolves and wendigos and like all this dangerous stuff is actually real, and they have to deal with that. So sort of like supernatural TV show, but like less hunty things and less stabby things and more like along the lines of urban fantasy. And the biggest problem I have with urban fantasy is that it always seems like the main character is not familiar with the concept of these creatures, like they've never heard about vampires or werewolves before a vampire or werewolf shows up, or they don't have a lot of knowledge about it. So I just want a main character who has a lot of knowledge previously, like they read tons of urban fantasy and fiction, and then they discover, oh my gosh, that's a real thing, and they need that knowledge to help them along their path. Like, I don't know, they just become the researcher of the group, but they already have like a grimoire of all the weird supernaturally things in their head, and that informs their decisions. I hope I did justice explaining what I want, but that's basically what I want. I want this book, but with like urban fantasy stuff. So the next mashup I want is for Simon versus the Homo sapiens agenda. So this is just a really, really cute contemporary about a boy trying to find love, and he's already in love with his online companion, this other boy named Blue, and he wants to figure out who Blue is. And it's just a really sweet, like, teen contemporary with gay love, and it's awesome. However, I want to match that up with this. So this is night school. Now I want to take a concept from here where night school refers to a place where supernatural creatures go. So anywhere from witches to mermaids to like certain types of demons to shapeshifters to werewolves, vampires, all of that sort of stuff, all the supernatural creatures in the world, they all go to this high school that they refer to as night school because it happens at nighttime. So I want like a supernatural high school situation where you get to see all these different types of supernatural mythological creature kids being kids in high school, but I want it to be like a gay romance, like a sweet like little gay romance, but I want them to all be like supernatural creatures and stuff, and like being in supernatural creature school where like they're learning different sort of things, like they're learning math and English and all that good stuff, but they're also learning like Alchemy 101 and like, you know, fun stuff like that. So I want these two things to mash together so I can have a sweet gay romance, but they be like vampires, werewolves, mermaids, and like your best friend's the demon from hell. Like, that's what I want. My next mashup has to do with Shadow and Bone and the whole Grisha universe by Leigh Bardugo. So one of the things I found most disappointing about this was that I really, really like the Darkling and Alana or whatever her name is. And like, I know the Darkling isn't a great character. I'm not trying to say he's a great character. I mean, my favorite character of all time is Tom Riddle. I think I know when a person is bad, but that doesn't stop me from liking them. However, what I really, really wanted from this was a relationship between Elena and the Darkling where they were both sort of evil. So what I would want is like a concept like this where it's a fantasy world where there are two characters who are pretty evenly matched, who are super, super powerful, and like they're constantly circling each other, but somehow like they come together in a relationship, or like not even like a relationship, but like a fondness for each other. And I just want a story revolving around like an anti-hero, like an Elena being an anti-hero and then the Darkling being an anti-villain, which I know anti-hero and anti-villain are really close to the same thing, but it's like one is more good than evil and one is more evil than good, but like they have like middle points. So really I just want a story where there are two like love interests, or like potential love interest, in which they are, one is an anti-hero and one is an anti-villain, like is sort of depicted the relationship between Elena and the Darkling when Elena goes a little bit darker in certain parts of this book. So I just want maybe like a fantasy, maybe a sci-fi, something where there are two really, really powerful characters and they're like constantly circling each other, and one's a little more good than evil and one's a little more evil than good, and then just, I don't know what's supposed to be happening. I don't know, maybe they have to team up to defeat something else. I don't know. I just want drama, and I want that sort of couple and to watch what they're gonna do. I don't know how that would work, but it's something that I want. Then the last mashup that I would want is A Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. This is a sci-fi book in which a lot of the characters come from very diverse backgrounds. We have humans that come from a special sect that like diverged long ago, so they're very much more passive, and they're pacifists, and they have a different concept. We have humans that come from like traditional Earth, so like, and Mars, and like the original colony sort of place, so they have different concepts. We have like different aliens, we have reptile aliens, we have one that like can change gender. Basically there's a whole team of wayfarers, and every individual person on the team, I haven't even mentioned them all, they all come from different backgrounds and from different races and from different cultures, and we see them all together on this ship talking to each other, talking about what irritates them, how they are trying to relate to each other despite having these different backgrounds and these different cultures and these completely different races, and how they like are friends and in this like group, this team. And I would like that sort of concept, but again with like supernatural fantasy stuff. So I would like maybe a paranormal thing where it takes a group of people who are like different races of like supernatural creatures, so like vampires, werewolves, wendigos. I don't know if you could be a friend with a wendigo, but like maybe like mermaids, like all of these different like creatures that are talked about in myths, and I would want them to put them in an environment where they have to discuss things with each other and have conversations, because like the main part of this book isn't them doing something, but them talking to each other and you learning more about the characters and how they relate to each other. So I would like a character driven book, but instead of it being like sci-fi and different aliens and stuff having to relate to each other, it being supernatural creatures and different supernatural creatures and stuff having to relate to each other. Like, how is a fairy supposed to relate to a vampire, and like, you know, stuff like that. So the character driven concept of conversation and philosophy and all that stuff that goes on here, but instead of aliens, supernatural creatures, and that's what I want. So that was it for my mashup. I just want like one specific thing out of certain books and basically just put supernatural creatures in it. Like, I feel like that's the theme of this video, is I just want more books that have a diverse cast of supernatural creatures in which one isn't villainized over the other, and like they're like a homogenous group like that talk and converse and like stuff like that, like what we see in sci-fi with like different aliens and stuff talking and stuff. But I want that with supernatural creatures. I just want to see the supernatural creature community just being a community and doing normal ass stuff, but hey, my best friend's a vampire. Like, that's what I want. That's just all I want from a book. I feel like that's not too much to ask. So if you have any great mashup suggestions that you think would be like completely awesome, it's your like pinnacle mashup, comment down below and tell me what is like your highest pinnacle of mashup, and I would like to know, because I'm curious, like, what are your fondest dreams for a book that you want somebody to write for you? Because, like, I could write these books, but I'm lazy and writing seems really hard, and I don't think I'm at a place in my life in which that is something that I would do. Like, I'm a procrastinator. I can't force myself to do stuff that I don't like. So, or, like, I can, but like I have no motivation and it probably won't turn out great. So like I want somebody to write these books for me and I'd be like, yes, thank you. So if you like what you're seeing here and you want to continue to see more, click all those buttons down below, and goodbye, internet.